On this Tuesday night, heartache in flood-ravaged Nova Scotia.
The whole entire province is sick with mourning for the loss of 3 souls.
New revelations about their final moments, plus the crews working around the clock to search for the person still missing. Migrants stranded in the desert heat.
We are suffering.
The crisis and brutal conditions at the border of Libya and Tunisia. The eve of a major federal cabinet shakeup in Canada. Who's out, who's likely in, and why? Plus, Olympic organizers feeling the heat.
It's just not safe.
The challenges of climate change for next summer's Paris Games.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. There is another development in the search for children who disappeared in flash floods in Nova Scotia. The RCMP say the body of a second child was recovered this morning. The Premier says Nova Scotians can handle a lot, but nothing compares to this.
Another incredibly sad day in what's now been a series of terrible days in this province, where the whole entire province is sick with mourning for the loss of 3 souls now.
We now know a bit more about how it happened. All 4 people were believed to be fleeing their flooded homes when their vehicles were caught in the surge of water. Mike Armstrong has our top story from Nova Scotia tonight. Mike?
Well, Donna, as the days have dragged on, it's gotten harder and harder to hope for a happy ending here. Well, today police gave us some sad news. The bodies of the 2 children swept away by floodwaters in the storm this weekend have been found. One was recovered Monday, the other this morning. The body of a 52-year-old man was also found Monday, but there is still one person missing, what police describe only as a youth.
The tragedy that's happened here is really unimaginable, really hard to comprehend.
Now, new details are coming out about what happened here Saturday morning at about 4 a.m. There were several people traveling in 2 vehicles. They knew the storm was bad and were trying to get to a safer area.
And that's when they were struck with the storm surge as they were leaving and were kind of pushed off of the road into a field that then quickly flooded with water.
Now, there were other people in the vehicles who escaped. They were rescued, taken to hospital, and have been released. The search is a massive effort. In addition to police and firefighters, search and rescue teams from several communities have been brought in. There are also volunteers.
Local residents, strangers, they've been out here for days, hours, volunteering their time, and they care.
That mayor says some of the searchers have barely spoken to their families in days. They are instead, he says, focused on helping other families. Donna?
Okay, Mike Armstrong in Newport, Nova Scotia tonight. Thank you. 2 Air Force pilots in Greece have died after the Canadian-made water bomber they were in crashed while fighting wildfires. It was caught on video, and a warning, it is disturbing. You can see the Canadair plane flying low, dropping its load of water. Its wingtip appears to hit a tree and it crashes into a ravine, bursting into flames. The pilots were fighting a fire on the island of Evia near Athens. Greece has been plagued by scorching temperatures for more than 2 weeks, fueling the wildfires. At least 19,000 people have fled the popular vacation island of Rhodes. And there are evacuations in Corfu, and the island of Crete has now been put on high alert. Italy is also enduring wildfires and extreme weather. In the north, torrential rain, violent hail, and high winds downed trees and damaged buildings. At least 4 people have been killed. In the south, it is the extreme temperatures causing chaos. In Sicily, where it hit 47 degrees Celsius in some places yesterday, wildfires are threatening towns and cities and resorts, and tourist hotspots are evacuating their guests. Complicating matters, the airport in Sicily's capital, Palermo, was temporarily shut down as fires closed in. It is now partially reopened. The extreme heat extends well beyond southern Europe. Scorching temperatures extend south to North Africa and the Middle East. The whole region is caught in a prolonged stretch of relentless heat. From Algeria to Syria, temperatures have soared well above 40 degrees this week, with the thermometer reaching 50 degrees in Tunisia's capital on Monday. That heat has been deadly in parts of northern Algeria, where wildfires have reduced entire villages to ash. Officials say at least 34 people have been killed and more than 1,500 have been forced to flee. About 8,000 firefighters are battling the nearly 100 wildfires burning in Algeria. Temperatures in the high 40s are forecast to hold until the end of the month. And in those blistering temperatures, dozens, if not hundreds, of migrants are stranded at the Tunisian-Libyan border. For weeks now, they've been stuck in no man's land with little or no shelter, food, or water. Many had hoped to make it to Europe, but as Redmond Shannon reports, a new billion-dollar deal between the EU and Tunisia makes that dream next to impossible.
Parched and exhausted in the desert heat wave, begging for water. These videos provided by Libyan authorities show what they say are rescues of migrants from sub-Saharan Africa.
A child? How old? Look at this, for God's sake. Document this.
For weeks, both Libya and Tunisia have effectively locked large groups of people in no man's land between the two countries.
There is no food. See where we are sleeping. So everything, so dirty, so stone. We are suffering. We need help from UN. It's what we need, please.
They brutalize us. They maltreat our women. They maltreat the youth. Here we have been drinking this river water.
Libya says it found 5 people dead in a remote border area Monday. The exact number of people still stuck is unclear. Earlier this month, Tunisia expelled hundreds of people to its Libyan and Algerian borders after rising tensions and deadly violence between migrants and Tunisians. Tunisian President Kais Saied says his country has treated all migrants humanely. But in February, he blamed black African migrants for crime and said they were part of a criminal plan to change the composition of the demographic landscape of Tunisia. Since the expulsion, Tunisia signed a $1 billion deal with the European Union to control the migration routes to Europe passing through Tunisia, similar to the deals the EU has struck with Libya and Turkey.
Handing over money to the Tunisian government, despite the abuses being perpetrated against these migrants and asylum seekers, is only going to encourage those abuses to continue.
More than 2 million people have paid smugglers to cross the Mediterranean to Europe in the past decade. Hundreds died near Greece last month while doing so. For these people, that is a risk they will gladly take to escape an open-air prison in the baking heat. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
In China, a mystery is deepening within the highest ranks of the government. The Chinese foreign minister, who has not been seen in public for nearly a month, is now out of a job. Qin Gong was removed from office and replaced by his predecessor. Authorities have given no explanation or said where the 57-year-old has gone. His disappearance has fueled lots of speculation, including rumors of a power struggle at the top or an alleged affair. A career diplomat, he'd served as the foreign minister for just 7 months. A retired RCMP officer who's been charged with foreign interference has been granted bail, and a second former Mountie has been linked to the case. It's alleged William Miker helped the Chinese government identify and intimidate a victim in Canada. He faces 2 charges, conspiracy and preparatory acts for the benefit of a foreign entity. Miker had been living in Hong Kong before his arrest in British Columbia. As part of his bail conditions, he must surrender his passport and provide $250,000 in cash and assurances.
Mr. Miker, as you heard, was released on conditions. They're conditions that were negotiated by the defense and the Crown because we thought that they were able to address the concern of whatever flight risk there is.
Miker retired from the RCMP in 2007. The offenses are alleged to have taken place between 2014 and 2019. Investigators say they're not related to foreign interference in elections. Another of Miker's bail conditions, he's not allowed to communicate with another former high-ranking RCMP officer, Kenneth Kim Marsh, or FBI agent Ross Gaffney. Marsh was commander of an RCMP International Organized Crime Unit and has been named an alleged co-conspirator in court documents. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is set to make some big changes to his government's front bench. A cabinet shuffle is expected tomorrow. At least 7 ministers are set to leave, with several other key figures preparing to take on new portfolios. Mackenzie Gray breaks down what we know.
After weeks of planning by Justin Trudeau and his advisors, the Prime Minister is set to deliver his biggest cabinet shuffle ever.
I've made the difficult decision to not run in the next election.
Transport Minister Omar Alghabra, one of 4 MPs, including Procurement Minister Helena Jazik and Fisheries Minister Joyce Murray, announcing they won't run in the next election. A senior government source telling Global News that Trudeau informed ministers if they weren't running again, they'd be out of cabinet.
I'm also stepping aside from my role as minister because the Prime Minister deserves a cabinet who is committed to running in the next federal campaign.
But those aren't the only removals. Justice Minister David Lametti, Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino, and Treasury Board President Mona Fortier will also be dropped from cabinet, according to a senior government source.
I think this is an opportunity for reset, for reflection, for the government, taking stock of who their best performers are and making sure that they've got the biggest challenges in front of them.
With at least 7 cabinet ministers moving on, that leaves room for Trudeau to promote fresh faces while also maintaining gender parity and regional balance. Watch for Mississauga's Richie Valdez, Ottawa's Jenna Sudds, Vancouver's Terry Beach, and Toronto MPs Yara Sachs and Arif Virani, all to be sworn in as ministers tomorrow at Rideau Hall.
I suspect they'll be looking for a cabinet that has the right energy to go the next couple miles until the next election.
There will also be a major shuffle of current cabinet ministers. Anita Anand moves from defense over to an economic portfolio, Bill Blair taking her old job at D&D.
Creating great middle-class jobs.
While the changes are substantial, many of the top portfolios are set to stay the same. Chrystia Freeland continuing on as Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister. Same goes for Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly and Industry Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne, expected to lead the charge to try and improve the Liberals' declining poll numbers.
Quite clearly, the Liberals are in danger if an election is triggered tomorrow, and let's keep in mind that they are in a minority situation, and whether or not an election is triggered is not necessarily up to them.
The new cabinet will have roughly a month to learn their portfolios before the Prime Minister convenes a retreat of his team in Charlottetown in late August, Donna, where they'll chart the course ahead for the next sitting of Parliament.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thank you. Some Canadian researchers are calling for an independent national inquiry into Canada's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. In a series of papers published in the British Medical Journal, more than a dozen physicians and health advocates detail what they call Canada's major pandemic failures. They include catastrophic deaths in long-term care homes, inconsistent public health messaging, and vaccine hoarding. The authors say an inquiry would be the next step in the pandemic, and an important one, in order to prepare for the next emergency. Forensic anthropologists have begun excavation work in Manitoba as they search for possible unmarked graves in the basement of a Catholic church.
Really looking for, are there changes in the soil? Is there anything to show us that the soil is really mixed in and mixed up? Because that's what tells us someone has dug a hole and put something here.
Researchers will spend the next 4 weeks combing through the basement of Our Lady of Seven Sorrows Church. It's about 400 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg. Last year, ground-penetrating radar found 14 anomalies beneath the church's dirt floor. Israel's doctors defend democracy, coming up their own fears about the country's new judicial reforms. In Israel, mass protests on the streets have now ended, but the political crisis in that country is growing. Today, doctors walked off the job, and labor leaders have threatened to strike over the judicial reforms that weaken the country's Supreme Court. Many fear it will weaken democracy in Israel, and as Crystal Gamansing reports, there are worries other countries might follow suit.
Black, the color of mourning, splashed across the front page of 4 prominent Israeli newspapers. An ad apparently paid for by a group of tech companies with the line, "A black day for Israeli democracy."
I'm wearing this black shirt today because that's how we feel.
On Monday, the government stripped power from the Supreme Court, banning it from striking down policies for reasonability. Fearing how the new law could impact them, doctors walked off the job Tuesday morning.
The minister has vast power, and he can tell the physicians what to do in every decision. The physicians cannot work like that.
The government turned to the courts to halt the 24-hour job action. Across the country, people are cleaning up from days of demonstrations with mixed feelings.
I believe in the resistance. I believe in Israeli democracy. I believe in all the amazing people that were here the past days fighting.
At times, police and demonstrators fought as roads and highways were blocked. In one incident, a driver attempted to plow through a crowd in Kfar Saba. These dramatic scenes are likely to reoccur. Benjamin Netanyahu made it clear more judicial reforms are coming. Democratic backsliding is the term Ariel Katz uses.
There can't be any functioning democracy without courts interfering and reviewing and sometimes voiding or declaring unconstitutional actions of the other branches.
What's happening in Israel, he says, goes beyond healthy debate or correcting overreach, and that other leaders determined to grab more control are watching.
When they are successful, that inspires others, right, in other countries.
Ultimately, he says, the changes will be felt most acutely by minorities and vulnerable people. With Israel's far-right government, that means Palestinians could suffer even more. Nearly 7 million are repressed, living under Israeli military occupation in Palestinian territories, including the West Bank. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
Financial feasibility ahead. Alberta weighs the economics of hosting the 2030 Commonwealth Games. Alberta is considering a bid for the 2030 Commonwealth Games. Australia just dropped out of hosting the 2026 Games because of ballooning costs. Sarah Offen has more on Alberta's history with the Games and the risks involved of doing it again.
At 13 years old, she was one of the youngest athletes to compete in Edmonton's 1978 Commonwealth Games, a moment that would launch Monica Gorman into a lifetime career in sport.
To be in a Canadian city, an Edmonton home crowd, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
She won 2 medals at those games and many more on the international stage before creating her own gym.
I can say that I play for a living because of the direction that I've taken my work.
An Alberta group is exploring reprising the legacy of 78 with a bid for 2030.
Bringing the Commonwealth Games back to Canada, where they first started, it's a really great opportunity for us to see and show the world really where we've come in all this time.
It's an opportunity Australia's state of Victoria recently opted out of, withdrawing from the 2026 Games because of ballooning costs, and not without precedent. In 1974, an Edmonton task force noted the original 1971 Commonwealth proposal would cost $9.75 million. It jumped to $44.6 million.
Whoever's organizing the event can come in and dictate whatever they want. They don't like the grass, replace it. They don't like the security setup, change it. They don't like the barricades, they don't like anything. They don't even like the color of the seats, change it. So all of those costs have to be borne by the host city.
Organizers say they're reducing that burden by spreading the games across Alberta, in Calgary, Edmonton, and First Nations communities.
We have a strong volunteer base here, and this will be a really good catalyst to help renew that.
Premier Danielle Smith is asking her Minister of Tourism and Sport to develop an international games bidding policy, requiring a referendum for affected communities. A decision on whether to keep the bid moving is expected by August. Gorman hopes it'll mean another chance for young athletes to shine.
Competing on home ground is one of the most powerful experiences that I ever was able to experience.
Sarah Offen, Global News.
Next, as a heat wave bakes southern Europe, what's in store for the Olympics in Paris next summer? In just over a year from now, the Olympic Summer Games will begin in Paris, and today the Olympic torch for the 2024 Games was unveiled. It is sleek, silver, and symmetrical, and it's meant to represent the reflection of the Eiffel Tower on the surface of the Seine River. Only 2,000 torches instead of about 12,000 from previous games will be made to help reduce the game's carbon footprint. The organizers say they are focusing on sustainability at these games, though as Eric Sorensen explains, keeping athletes cool in Europe's sweltering summer heat will be a challenge.
Paris wants nothing less than a magnificent Olympics to celebrate not just competition, but French culture and history. Beach volleyball beside the Eiffel Tower, BMX in the shadow of ancient sculptures, and staging the opening ceremonies on the Seine, the historic river in the heart of Paris. This month, a flotilla of boats did a test run on the route.
We just believe that all games needs to be different if we want the people to remember those games.
But one problem has only grown since Paris was awarded the Games 6 years ago. Global warming.
Parce qu'on se rend compte maintenant que ça devient une quasi-certitude qu'on aura de fortes températures.
We now realize it's almost a certainty we'll have high temperatures in the summer of 2024, says the Paris organizing director, and we're organizing to ensure the safety of athletes and others. Paris is cleaning the Seine, not just for opening ceremonies, but for some swimming events. Many competitions from track and field to equestrian take place under the sun. Organizers suggest Olympic athletes can perform in the heat.
The athletes are used to compete every summer in extreme conditions, sometimes in countries, so they are able to adapt.
But some experts worry.
People coming from different parts of the world, who are not used to competing and participating in this level of heat is going to be a real problem.
On Tuesday, the IOC president, Thomas Bach, toured the athletes' village, where special cooling is being built into the floors to ensure the athletes can at least keep cool where they sleep.
This should be really in order and to make the athletes feel well and comfortable.
Comfortable, at least until they step outside to compete.
I think we're going to hear from some of our health experts saying that this is not an acceptable approach to hosting any type of sporting event. And we'll have to rethink the model of the games going forward because it's just not safe.
Extreme heat could see some competitions rescheduled to early morning or nighttime, but organizers are committed to staging much of the games at outdoor venues under the sun and say they'll just have to watch the temperature forecasts as the games approach. Eric Sorensen, Global News.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Terra Nova National Park in Newfoundland and Labrador. We'd love to see your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.